yes, Kid Rock has a bar here in Nashville, and I still love the fact that what it's most known for is the one night that some dude got drunk and threw his colostomy bag all over the place.
Oh.
It's like Kid Rock's Bar and Grill. So I just want to remind everyone who goes to order a steak at Kid Rock's Big Ass Honky Tonk Bar and Grill that took place.
And that may happen again while you're there, so be on the lookout.
Yeah, so be sure to order that steak full time.
Head on a swivel.
Just for your own advisement.
Okay, note to self. Well, as much as we try to plan things ahead of schedule, life keeps on life and then the music keeps on flowing. And before we get into this playlist, we're going to pause to play this for a second and talk about something that just happened recently and share our quick thoughts on that.
Yes, sir.
And then we'll go right back into the episode as originally planned. Ready to get into it?
Well, let's get into it.
All right, so we're going to quickly share some thoughts on Lil Wayne's Carter 6. Just randomly dropped. Last Friday before last, one or the two?
Yeah, something like that. Within the last week or so. So don't want to dedicate a whole episode to this, but we definitely got to say something. My opening thoughts. I just want to get this out the gate. The Carter 6 is a actually very well put name because I give it a 6 out of 10. It's coming out the gate.
Ouch.
Coming out the gate.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna say it this way. Yes, is this Lil Wayne's best work? Absolutely not. Is it complete trash like everybody's going on? It's not.
It's getting a lot of undeserved hate for sure.
100%. So at this point, I think it's kind of like it's the people are just bagging on it just for the social media clout. But I will say one of the funniest memes I did see was like somebody was like, "Hey, if you listen to the Carter 6, you may be entitled to compensation."
That is pretty good. That is pretty good.
That's pretty harsh. But I will say this. In my experience listening to the album, because it just dropped out of nowhere, and I think you text me, "Oh yeah, Lil Wayne album just dropped." I was like,
yeah.
Word. I was like, cool. I was driving at the time. Cool, I'll put it on. I got all the way to Loki's theme. And from that point on down, I was like, okay, a couple bangers, a couple misses here. But, for the most part, I'm like, okay, I was excited to continue to listen to it. And then the next day, I was getting ready to head out. So I decided to resume the album. And that's when I proceeded to drive off a cliff.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, man.
I had a very similar experience. I think I stopped whatever song was dropped before Loki's theme, like Island Getaway, Holiday.
Island Holiday.
That was the last one I listened to. And I was like, I'll pick it back up tomorrow. And had basically the exact same reaction. And Loki's theme is weird. Just like so many of the songs have like really weird production choices that are grating and this like don't match. Like it's weird because like the first half of the album had some very slick beats that he was just like kind of mastering on, showing his what people know Lil Wayne for. And then you get to about Loki's theme and it's just really weird production choices that are grating and it's annoying in a way to me.
I totally agree.
Does that make sense?
And, 100%. And like, so another quick few thoughts before we have to get back into the actual episode. One, I can tell, okay, I'm conflicted and I'm also amazed at the same time. So I could tell Lil Wayne was risking a lot of different things as far as production choices. Like he wanted to kind of just go left and go just kind of like do the unexpected, which I appreciate that. However, I prefer it to be organic. And there are, when it comes to me, I like my weird shit. So one of the songs that people was like, what the hell is this? Actually became my favorite song of the whole album.
Please tell me you don't like Peanuts to an Elephant.
Bro, that is my favorite song of the whole album.
I fucking hate that song so much, dude. That shit is so
fucking good, dude. I love that song.
No, man. I'm sorry.
I love it. I love it. It's so funny. After the album came out, I saw a comment where someone said it sounds like a kid in the 90s that got his first computer and is just playing around with a 90s era soundboard. That's exactly what the beat is like. It is so bad, dude. Like the fact of the matter that like he rapped like seriously over this cartoony ass beat, like that takes skill. Like, because like some people are so beat dependent that like they require the beat to kind of fill in the gaps. The fact that he was like, give me the stupidest beat, I'm a rap legit hard as fuck over it and make you actually like the shit. I'm Peanuts to the Elephant. I fucking love that shit. And Roll Tide. So, but I absolutely love that song. That shit was my favorite. The one I can't. Oh, you love it. The one I absolutely cannot stand is Maria. That pissed me off more than anything.
Maria.
Yeah, that pissed me off because
I like the opera. Background in the background.
That shit was clashing. Like
we're so opposites.
Like how the fuck you like take Ave Maria and like clash with it? Like no, like he was fighting against that the whole time. And then I feel like
he was fighting against the elephants to Athena.
Oh man.
I thought he was actually like he did pretty good with an opera backing track for that one. That's so funny that we're so opposites on that.
Finally, that shit was fucking garbage. But like, but the one thing I do want to say, like, I could tell that Lil Wayne was kind of trying to be his full self on this whole project, and like, because this album is like rebirth mixed in with the whole Carter series, where it was just kind of just go completely rock out of nowhere. And I could tell that he does like the rock music genre, and even though people didn't appreciate the rebirth album when he tried to do more of the rocky stuff, it's just I appreciate him making that effort to try to blend in everything that he loved, and whether or not it works successfully or not to be determined. But I do appreciate the effort. The execution wasn't there. Like, I think if he were to had a single producer produce the whole album, that would like help.
So yeah, we don't want to take too much more time on it. We have a lot more thoughts we probably could take if we really wanted to, but we'd love to hear what you guys think about the new album, Lil Wayne's new album, The Carter 6. Let us know if you also were kind of disappointed, or if you loved it. We're wrong. The internet is bad for trashing it. Let us know what you think.
Yep. Anyway, playlist has been paused. It's time to resume. Let's get back to the episode. Welcome to After Playlist, the music playlist discussion and reaction podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Terry Yo.
And I'm Brandon Lee.
And we love music and talking about it. And today, we're going to do a little something different. We're going to step into the mind of a real life recording artist. A good friend of mine from way back when. At the time of this recording, he has 2 albums available right now on Apple Music, Spotify, and wherever else you can listen to music or steal music. Also, he is currently touring Nashville and the Southern United States and other areas. And most importantly, he can be found dropping thirst traps online to sell tickets to his shows.
This is
Welcome
true.
to the show, Jon Latham.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Welcome.
Don't come for free, So.
You never got to pay for them. When I saw that photo, I was dying.
Just for reference, for those who don't know what he's talking about, my wife happened to snap a picture of me inside of a hot tub at a get together at a cabin in Blue Ridge.
There you go, Brandon.
There it is. So yeah, like I figure I could join the thirst trap community and really, start moving. That show did sell out, so it did work.
Hey, there you go.
There you go. Hey, you know what?
Sex sells, man.
Exactly.
It does. That's hilarious.
And that's just the one that I posted. You just think of the outfits. You have to use your imagination for that, folks.
Yeah.
Facts.
And if you want those, you gotta go on OnlyFans for that.
Right on.
Oh man. All right. So of course, we do have a playlist dedicated to this episode, the Jon Latham episode featuring Jon Latham. And we're going to be referring to these songs throughout the episode. So to ensure that everyone is familiar, let's introduce the songs that are being featured today. And I'm going to read through the playlist, so buckle up. First song we're going to be talking about throughout the playlist is Younger Face by Dan Baird.
Dan Baird.
All right. Major Key by none other than Jon Latham. Paint Your Pretty Picture, live at the Great American Music Hall back in 1976 by Carmen McRae.
Mm-hmm.
Last in Line by Jon Latham. Nightmare by Aaron Lee Tasjan. Okay. Kimberly Met Billy by Jon Latham. Sorry You're Sick by Ted Hawkins. Old Skin, The War on Drugs. A Good Country Mile by Kevn, Kinney, and the Gold Palominos.
Mm-hmm.
Hey Jude by Wilson Pickett. The Kiss by Judee Seal. Trouble Every Day by the Mothers of Invention. The Braver Man by Jon Latham. And Angels May. Yeah, I don't know why I keep wanting to say Angels May Cry. Angels May Cry. God dang it. Angels May, Dan Reader, and Yearbook Signatures by Jon Latham. If you have not already listened to these songs that we're about to discuss, there's direct links to the playlist in the description, aka the show notes, for your listening pleasures.
And before we dive into the episode, we have our usual after playlist disclaimers. Number 1, as always, we respect everyone's opinion, regardless of how wrong and awful it may be. Number 2, we are not country music experts, me and Terrio, but I think it's safe to say that we've developed an appreciation through our previous playlists and guests that we've had on the show. That being said, though, if we do get something wrong, please give us a little slack. Let us know if we got something wrong, but you can be polite about it.
Yeah.
And number 3, we're just talking about the music, not any real life personal or cancelable issues today.
All right.
Let me throw a disclaimer in there as the guy who made the playlist too.
Yeah.
I've being in Nashville, it's very quick to kind of shoebox everyone into the country realm. What some people consider country music in some regards, I don't know if I would fall directly into that description. If what some people consider country music is what they hear on the modern country stations, if they were to listen to what they're about to hear, they probably will not find anything on this playlist that lines up with that whatsoever.
100%.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But country music, just like any other genre, is a very wide scope. And I think country music, if you're really thinking about it from the realm of the fact that it was born out of, much like rock and roll, it was born out of different parts of folk and blues and roots music within the United States, then that there is like a wide breadth of different types of sound. So there may be some stuff on here that, if you consider me a country artist, which sometimes I don't know if that's necessarily the greatest, it could be seen as a misnomer by some folks, but there may be some stuff on here that seems very out of left field for somebody in Nashville, but just keep that in mind going forward as well. Just keep an open mind.
That's funny because that's actually something I was going to jump into, but let me finish this last little thought real quick. And lastly, if you enjoy the podcast, go and give us a like, subscribe, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Anyway, so let's get right into it. Yeah, I was going to ask you that because my first question was going to be,
we're so on the same page on that. I can tell.
How do you describe your music? Because it's not country. Because I was thinking Americana.
Well, Americana was exactly how I was.
That's what I was thinking, but I don't know what category to put it under.
So it gets lumped into this kind of subgenre known as Americana. For those that are uninitiated, Americana is kind of a catch-all in the most part. And Americana, when it was just kind of like this burgeoning idea of a definition of what the music was being made, it was basically just something that described a form of alternative country. The best that I can describe as to kind of like what it would be is like artists that were influenced by roots music and country music, but also were bringing it from the perspective of like rock and roll. A lot of what are considered kind of like the forefathers of alternative were bands that kind of popped up in the late 80s, early 90s. For instance, probably the best known kind of alternative band, or the Americana band, would probably be something like Uncle Tupelo, which when they were around made very much like not much of a whisper when they were existing as a band. But Uncle Tupelo was the band that gave birth to two other bands that became fairly well known, one of which was Sunvolt. Jay Farrar from Uncle Tupelo, when the band broke up, he went off and created Sunvolt. And then Jeff Tweedy went on to create Wilco. And, Wilco has now been around for, I think this is their 30th anniversary this year. So from all of that, basically became a catch-all for any type of country music or roots-based music that wasn't getting played on modern rock stations, was not getting played on modern country stations. And these days, certain country legacy acts have kind of fallen into that as well. For instance, back in 1980, 1990, it was very normal to hear somebody like Dwight Yoakam on your country radio station. These days, he's playing all the Americana festivals, and you're not going to hear him on the modern country station. So it's kind of become this catch-all of anything that has any type of a rootsy, if it's got its legs inside of folk music, country music, roots blues music, anything like that, even if it's in kind of like the sonic realm of rock or any other type of thing, like it kind of falls into the Americana genre. So I kind of get lumped into that too. I consider my stuff, quite honestly, to be very much straight down the middle rock and roll with folk moments.
It definitely has a very rock and roll aesthetic vibe to every song I've heard of yours, pretty much. There's very few that I was like, oh, this is a little bit more country. A lot of them have. I think it's in large part the guitar.
Yeah,
your guitar playing. I assume that's you playing the guitar in your songs. It is pretty solid, very very rock. As someone who like grew up with a dad who played guitar,
yeah,
that definitely was a big factor.
Well, I grew up in like a Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty household as well. So like that's always been kind of my go-to, is like, like the blessed holy trinity for me at any point is usually Bruce Springsteen, Tom Petty, and Bob Dylan. So it all kind of falls into that kind of somewhere in the middle of that triangle is what I'm aiming for. But I listen to everything, and I think I tried to.
You could tell by this playlist for sure that you definitely have a wide variety. Because
the playlist itself for sure.
Yeah, because I was listening to it, and then in my mind I was like, okay, country. Let me get my mindset because I'm not the biggest country music fan, but I like your stuff. Like I heard the Real Bad News album when you dropped it a couple years ago, and I enjoyed it. And I was like, okay, I can dig this, but then it really got me confused. I was like, is this technically country? Because I didn't know as far as the subgenres and all of that. But then I learned about Americana through Jensen Ackles, the actor. He has a band called The Radio Company. Right. And I listened to that album, and I was just like, I can dig this a lot. So I was very confused by that because this genre is something it's a music gumbo within the gumbo, if that makes any sense.
100%. and it's ever expanding. I think that's the interesting thing about it. You have like, and there's like any genre, there's different mindsets. Like there's not. There's always going to be the purists that will say that, like, okay, well, I don't hear anything that sounds like Doc Watson in this music, so how can you call it Americana? I don't hear any Lead Belly in this music, so how can you call it Americana? I don't hear anything in this music that sounds like Woody Guthrie. How can you call it Americana? Meanwhile, all the artists that are kind of, we didn't go into this being like, we're going to be Americana artists. They're just, we're all doing what we want to do. And there's going to be somebody out there who's like, okay, they're pushing the envelope just a little too far this way. This just sounds like pop music to me, or this sounds too much like R&B to me, or this sounds too much like this to me. But all in all, I think you can say that about any genre when you open it up that way.
Absolutely.
If that wasn't the case, there wouldn't be like a Drake and Kendrick rap feud ever.
Exactly. It'll be two rappers rapping on the same track but sound like one person.
100%.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think and it's kind of what I consider growing pains in a lot of ways, because Americana as a genre, it's flourishing right now, and it's also just expanding at a rate quicker than what any type of PR or marketing can do to kind of like define what it is. Every time they kind of think like, okay, we finally got a full encapsulating definition of Americana, then somebody else drops another album that has been in this genre for a while. They drop another album that absolutely changes any type of preconceived notion that was there before.
You know what? I just had a thought. It's funny how no matter what the genre is, but when you change the style, that style becomes a genre.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's crazy. Mm-hmm. Like, it can't just be, this is a style within the same genre, but it's like, oh, you're doing this style now. So that means you're automatically kicked out of this genre, and now you're in a whole nother genre, when in actual reality, you're just doing a particular style.
Right.
And on that song.
And it's also the birth of subgenres. Overall, like, let's just take hip hop, for instance. Inside hip hop, there's like trap music. There's,
there's drill.
There's
Southern, there's
exactly.
West Coast.
So you have all these and different regional sounds as well. East Coast doesn't sound like West Coast. The Southern region, like nothing sounds like Outkast. And so
They try, but no.
They try, but still, it's just like everything kind of, they bring their mix into it and it kind of becomes something new, you know?
Yeah.
But it all falls under the umbrella of hip hop. Same type of thing with Americana music, you know? If you're looking for somebody who sounds more country, they're there. If you're looking for something that sounds more rock and roll, there's somebody there for you. If you're looking for soul singers, we've got those, you know? It's all in.
Does that ever, you being in Nashville and you know, being a musician, does those competing, like, how do I want to say this? The draw to kind of like put yourself in one of those boxes of being like more Americana or more quote unquote country as you're like writing and making your music, do you ever feel the pull to kind of like lean more one way or the other? Or you just kind of, is your writing process more just like more personal and you don't necessarily think in that lens as you're writing?
I know that there's going to be a bunch of different opinions on this, but for me, and I think a lot of folks in my circle of friends here would agree with this, I think if you're trying to be authentic to yourself, then it's almost impossible to sit down with pen and paper and write something in hopes that somebody else might like it better. Anytime you go for the audience, anytime you're writing specifically for like, man, I have this idea for a song that I think everyone's going to love. If you approach it that way, as opposed to approaching it from something that you're trying to convey just for yourself, which I think is always, it's the toughest way to do it, but it's the most authentic way to do it, is to write for yourself. And if you're pushing yourself in that direction and you're authentically pushing yourself in that direction, that to me is artistic growth. That's the difference between artistic growth as a single artist and the opposite of that, which would be, I think, would be what would be defined as selling out, quote unquote.
Yeah.
You know, which is like, well, everybody else is doing this. Well, I need to make this type of music. You know, Morgan Wallen is selling, 10 million copies of his new album. I've got to have something that sounds like that. And I feel like it's like there's two different industries here in Nashville. The one that everybody thinks about is the same type of industry like any record industry, where it's very, very competitive, very dog-eat-dog, all of that. In the years that I've been in Nashville, and this will be my 12th year here in May, what I have learned is that yes, that industry does exist, and it runs kind of parallel to everything else that's going on within the local community musically. Within the realm of most of the songwriters and musicians that really are working songwriters and musicians here in town, there is much more of this kind of communal support, that the mindset is less dog-eat-dog and more of what is like a rising tide sails all ships. Like if one of us breaks out, if one of us does something great, if one of us gets national attention, that's not just good for them, it's good for all of us, because it's putting the spotlight on our community as a whole, because they're wondering where this person came from.
Right.
And a good example of this would be a couple of years ago. I say a couple of years. This is probably 5 or 6 years ago. A friend of ours in town, Margot Price, had a big breakout. She did a record, Midwest Farmer's Daughter. It came out on Jack White's label, and shortly after it came out, she had been involved in the local community for a while. That came out within a couple weeks of that album coming out. They booked her on Saturday Night Live. She was having a national audience at a grand scale, and it was just great for all of us. We were watching our friends, who we see on a week-to-week basis at the same bars and the same hangouts that we're at. They're working the same gigs that we're working, and there they are on national TV. And it's not I think the overall consensus was less of a type of thing of, God, why couldn't have that been me? And more of a, man, look, we're doing it. They're doing it. East Nashville is on the map. And I think that's such a wonderful thing to see. It's like this community that exists. And I think that community exists in all genres, but I can certainly say that, coming back to your question, I think that type of mindset just is something that helps to ground the authenticity of everything that we're creating. Is that in hopes that being true to ourselves, that work will not fail us. We're putting our, you're making something out of nothing. If you're doing it right, you sit there, you work it out. Sometimes some ideas come to you, sometimes they work, sometimes they don't. But out of that chaos of these thoughts and these melodies that you're coming up with, eventually one settles in where you figure out something about yourself, you translate something that was in your mind into something musical, and you've created art out of nothing. And that is
beautiful.
That is quite the payoff. When you finally put the pen in a song that you just finished, and you know that that's the finished song, you walk away from it with this great feeling of, even if nobody else likes this,
you did it.
I did it, and I made it, and it's mine.
And so that actually leads me to my next question, because we're definitely kindred spirits when it comes to creating music from nothing to something. What was the pull that made you transform this from a hobby into like, you know what, I want to do this for real. Like, I don't want to play about this no more. I want to make the jump from Atlanta to Nashville. I want to make this a real thing. Like, what was the pull? What was the transition that got you to make that jump?
That's a great question. Some people make plans for this, for years. Like, I did not really have a plan. The way that it all went down was I was doing it basically as a hobby here in town. It was like, I was playing just cover songs in bars, which is what you kind of do. And I would go to open mics and play some stuff there. And I ended up connecting with another girl in town, and she was writing her own songs. She was much younger than me, but we kind of connected, just the fact our voices sounded good together, and we kind of came up with some songs together, and we would play together and sing together. And so I was just kind of like along for the ride with her. And there had been plans at that point for her to come to Nashville and start working on some stuff. And that became the catalyst. I remember this goes back to, they moved to Nashville January of 2013. And probably around my birthday of that year, which would have been March, I got a call from her mom. They had already been up here for a couple months. And they basically had said, and it speaks to their belief in what I was able to do, because I certainly didn't see it in myself, but they said, if you were able to transfer your job and get a transfer to a location up here, because, I was working, I'm working at this place, the place.
Dun, dun, dun.
And they were just like, if you could find one that you could transfer here to, we think that it would be a good opportunity. You could continue working with her. And also, we just think with your love of music and all that, like you would fit in really well here. Like, if you could figure that out, we've got a spare bedroom where we are. You could kind of get your feet underneath you here and come up here and work. And so I looked into it. I found a location that had a spot open. I remember I talked to my folks about it, and said, like, they've offered me this opportunity to, like, I can stay with them. And so I made plans. And even when I got up here, I moved up here that following May, like Memorial Day weekend, I moved up here. And once I kind of got settled in, even then, the priority for me and what I was working on was more, again, just like accompanying her and playing guitar and really just enjoying that, enjoying that. And I'm happy to say we're still very, very, very close friends even now. She's still up here. She's still doing music and singing and all of that. But somewhere in that time frame, probably in like the first year or so that I was here, I started coming up with some ideas for songs that were just mine. And like I was doing in Atlanta, like we were hitting the same open mics here in Nashville. It's kind of that whole thing of like, once you get to Nashville, you work your way up the ladder from like just going to the open mics and hopefully getting a spot where you can sing your song. if that goes well, sometimes you'll be invited to do like a writers in the round thing. And if that goes well, you might get a showcase where you just get to do yours, and so on and so forth. Just like all these maybes and maybe so, maybe not type situations. But I remember I had this one song under my belt, which was on Real Bad News. It's called Dorothy. And I wrote it about a stripper in Atlanta at the Claremont Lounge.
Oh, okay.
And yeah, don't ask me why that was in my head at the time, but I just had this one song. And I remember.
Shouts out to Dorothy.
Yeah, shouts out to Dorothy for real.
She's still doing it. At least last time I checked, she's very old.
She got to be at the Claremont Lounge.
Claremont Lounge, absolutely.
If you don't know, the Claremont Lounge, imagine the most elite, illustrious strip club imaginable. Top tier women, beautiful, aesthetic, all of that. Now think of the exact opposite.
Yep.
That's the Claremont Lounge.
Yeah. If you want to see a 55-year-old woman gyrate to a Bobby Charles song, that's where you go.
Oh man.
So yeah. So I had this one song, and it's the one song I had that was mine. And I remember going out with them to the open mic one night, and like I was like, I'm gonna try and get up there and do one of my own. And I went up there and I did that song. And I remember the host of the open mic, he came up to me afterwards and he was just like, "That was great. You got any more like that?" And I said, "No, that's my one song." And he gave me the advice that night. He just kind of shook his head. He goes, "Great, keep going." And so what I would just do, as I had other songs that would come to me or other ideas that I had that I was working on, I would just try them out. Like I'd go back to the open mic when I had a new one, and I'd go back and try it out. And if he, again, he'd come to me and, "That one's great too, keep going." And just to the point where I just had this, at that one open mic, not only with the host, but other people that were coming there was this groundswell of like support from all of them, that just kind of like people kind of telling me that what I was doing was good. Mm-hmm. And you don't know until you try, and you don't know until somebody comes and tells you, "I liked that," Mm-hmm. But with that type of support, that support led to some people coming up to me. The people that were hosting that open mic worked at one of the local radio stations here. And it was sponsored by the local radio station. And they had like a locals only radio show where they would play local artists. And they said, "Do you have any of this stuff recorded?" And I said, "No, I wouldn't even know where to start with that." And so they were just like, "Well, we have a production studio at the radio station that we use to make commercials and bumps and stuff like that. It's big enough where you could come in there with your guitar and cut demos. If you cut a demo, we'll play it on the local show." And so I went in there on a weekend. They unlocked the radio station for me. One of their engineers was there to help me do it. I recorded one of the songs. They played it on the radio. And from there, one of the other guys who was coming to the open mic said, like, "That demo was pretty good, but we could do better. Just come. I've got a studio in my basement. Just come to the house and we'll make a record together." And that's how the first album got made. It became a project in this dude's basement. Mm-hmm. And me and him, basically just the two of us, I was overdubbing all the different instruments myself, and I just made the record with no inclination of any interest from anybody. And when that record came out, it really did more than I ever thought it would. Word of mouth traveled between different people. Other songwriters in town kind of took notice. At the end of the year, the publication The Bitter Southerner ranked it as one of the top 25 albums to come out of the South that year. And that was all with no PR, no marketing, and we never even sent it to The Bitter Southerner. They just found it, and
that's awesome.
Liked it. And so it was a very organic thing, and it remains a very organic thing. I don't have any type of team around me or anything like that, but just that whole experience of that first couple of years in Nashville and making that first record, I think that was the moment where I realized that it's one of those things where you don't know that you found your calling until you're in the thick of it for some people. I just knew how it felt to be able to go out there and to go to different towns and to go to different venues, and somebody would show up that wanted to see me. And it became very obvious that like this was somehow by this crazy manifest destiny of sorts that I found myself in Nashville, and it just kind of laid the path out as if I was supposed to be there in this weird little way. So yeah, I don't know if that fully answers that question, but that's definitely kind of how that all kind of went from being hobby to lifestyle, I guess would be the way to go about it.
Yeah. Brandon, let me ask you, have you been to Nashville before?
For like half a day, like a few times, because I have a lot of family in Tennessee that like we would go and visit sporadically growing up. As an adult, where I could actually like enjoy Nashville for what it is, no, I've not had the chance, unfortunately.
Okay. Well, I've went there once a couple of years ago for a hockey game. That apparently that me and my friend were the only people that knew that there was a hockey game going on that day, because nobody in Nashville gave a fuck about the Nashville Predators playing the San Jose Sharks at the time.
It has definitely changed.
Yeah, definitely now for sure. But at the time, like we were out there and everybody was like, "Oh, it's a hockey game?" It was like, "Yeah." Oh, okay. So that was the vibe at the time. But yeah. I will say this though, just being up there, I forget the arena, but like the street down there is like we end up going down to like the Hard Rock Cafe and a couple other little bars, and it's just something about, I don't know if it's in the water, I don't know if it's in the air, but it's just something about that whole atmosphere where I was just like I had goosebumps and my body was tingling, and I was just like, I feel like I kind of belong here a little bit, because it's just like the music is in the air. It's in everything. I don't know if they put it in the food or what.
Very music lover heavy area, right? That's one thing I know about.
It is. I will say too that like, where you were for the hockey game, that is Broadway.
Okay.
And Broadway is the tourist district. And that has definitely grown over the years too. The mentality of Broadway to some degree, it is a snapshot of the amount of musicality that is in Nashville. Mm-hmm. But I would also say that when we're talking about authenticity, if you liked what you experienced on Broadway, my challenge to anyone who's listening to this, if all you've seen of Nashville is the honky-tonk circuit on Broadway, that's like going to Epcot and then Epcot Center in Orlando and then saying that you visited Japan. Like, it's like just a very small characterization of what is happening in the city. The beauty of Nashville is for it being a small town, there is so much happening outside of the realm of that little tourist district that if you begin to go out a little bit further into Nashville and go across the river to East Nashville, where there's local bars and venues like the 5 Spot, the Basement East, East Side Bowl, the 58, the East Room, Soft Junk, any of these like small like artistic commune type places, or just bars with venues inside of them, Dee's Country Cocktail Lounge just out of town in Madison, you will get an even wider picture of what the local music community is doing. Broadway, you're seeing local musicians, but these days on Broadway, if you're going from bar to bar, you're going to be hearing top 40 country songs that and a lot of Journey and Bon Jovi covers, which is fine. I'm not dogging that. It's good for the bar sales. But it's not a full picture of what is happening with music being created in Nashville at the time.
Yeah.
So that's my challenge for anyone who comes to town. It's like, if you've never done Broadway before, it's worth doing once to say that you've done it. It's like going to Fremont Street in Las Vegas. It's like you go down there, you experience it, but then go off somewhere else and go where the locals are going. Go to where the townies hang. And that's when you get an authentic picture of the type of creative stuff that's happening in Nashville at the time. That's a lesson I learned even when I first moved here. There's just so much going on. We call it, my wife and I call it the Nashville sacrifice. On any given night, there's so many things happening. You have to decide what you're willing to miss.
Yeah,
so that you're going to go see something else. and it is tough to do sometimes. Let me tell you.
Oof. Okay.
Well, you've kind of touched on it there a little bit. I'm curious what your take is on the differences between playing live shows, especially in kind of those smaller venues like you were just mentioning, versus like recording your songs.
It's two different lines of work. I mean, I think I love them both. Like right now, as we're talking, I'm in the midst of working on a new record. It's been long overdue, but I'm working on a new album right now. And this time I brought in not only just me, but I brought in the band of the guys that I've been playing with live for the better part of the last decade. We've never recorded a record together before, ever.
Wow.
This is like a new thing for us too. What I will say is what we bring to the table by coming in and recording some of these songs that we've been playing for a couple of years that we've never recorded, they're road tested, we know how to play them. But when you get into the studio, the beauty of the studio is that you have all these, it's like a kid in a candy shop. The way that you play it live, I'm always going to be playing this guitar part through my Fender Telecaster, plugged into a Vox AC10, and it has this sound when I play it live. But when you're in a studio and the studio has gear there, it's like, well, how is this guitar part sounding through a Princeton reverb amp? How is this guitar part sounding if I play it on a Stratocaster instead of a Telecaster? What if I do it through a Stratocaster that has a sustainer on it that like makes this different noise when I hold it out? What type of snare drum do you want to play on the drums for this one? You have all these different options inside of the studio where you can really kind of craft the song in a way that you can't just do it spontaneously live. Live, there's, the element of playing live is that the human element is like you might mess up a note here or there, but at least it's live. In a studio environment, you're able to kind of like really kind of massage the song into something more, like you can really get into the woods on how the sonics of the song are going to be in a recorded form, because this is going to be the version you put out for posterity. So you kind of look at it from two different ways. In a live setting, you can't stop a song in the middle of a live show and be like, I can do that line a little bit better.
Wait. Everyone stop. Let's back up 10 seconds. Let me take that riff back real quick. Yeah, that doesn't happen.
I've seen some people do that, like if they forgot lyrics or something, but like that's something I would never do. Like to me, stopping a song in the middle of a show.
No, you play it out.
It's just not how I roll. So, if I hit a bum note, well, we're going to hit that bum note and we're going to keep going like it never happened.
Most people don't even notice.
No, but
in a live setting, most people won't even, unless you're like seriously flubbing it up and you're like playing a completely different song or something. Just a few missed notes. No one's going to notice a few missed notes.
I think the other trick and the other difference between the two is that there's a level of energy that you bring to a live performance because you're there in front of people. And you're there,
I could say that.
You're there in the moment. And so like the adrenaline's running, you're sweating, there's the bar chatter at the bar, and you like all these people are there, and you're playing it for the moment, and you're playing in the moment. The trick sometimes is when there's a lot of isolation and solitude inside of a studio because one guitar player will be off in this room, the drums are off in this room, but we're all playing together through headphones. But the trick is to try and bring that same energy that you played live, bringing that to the studio version, because sometimes, it's one of the reasons why you try and cut demos sometimes is because you can try and do it the way that you did it live, but then like you listen back and it's just like there's no push there, there's no energy.
Yeah, like something missing, right?
Yeah. So you have to kind of create the illusion in the studio, like any good album that you listen to, half the time the illusion is that all five people were in the room at the same time playing as if they played it live, when in fact, one guy was in this room, this guitar part here was played after the fact and overdubbed and all this type of stuff. But when you're listening to it as a listener, you are none the wiser on that. I certainly, having been through it, I think some people like to, and there's some YouTube guys out there who like to break down sessions and stuff on studio work, and they're like, we're going to isolate the guitar here so you can hear that and stuff. And I understand that does serve a purpose, but I think that takes a little bit of the magic out of just listening to a record as it was made and just like letting that illusion kind of take over. It's like watching a magic trick, you know? It's not as fun if you know how the magician's doing it.
Yeah, I can relate to that. It's almost like when you're watching a video on how the sausage was made or how Snickers were made, you don't want to know. Just like I just want to eat the the final product.
I enjoy the sugary goodness. Yeah,
exactly. Like like I don't want to know how much sugar's going in there. like a whole dump truck full of sugar. I want to know.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool beans. All right. So let's dive into the playlist a little bit.
Okay.
Definitely have some thoughts on a couple songs in particular.
Great.
For sure, the one that had me tongue-tied early on is the one that really caught me off guard for sure was Paint Your Pretty Picture.
Yeah, by Carmen McRae.
Yeah, I don't know how I missed this, but this was my first time ever hearing this song or even knowing anything about Carmen McRae. And
I didn't know anything about her either until until me and my wife got married.
Oh wow.
Because that the relationship's getting serious when the record collection becomes
wow.
Yeah.
So
that's a sure sign.
You know, I've been a record collector for years. It's my one true vice. And I remember when my wife and I started dating, she was talking about how she had some great records in her collection. And then when the process of her moving to Nashville for us to move in together, one of the first things she dropped off was just the crates of records that she had. And I was going through them, and there was some stuff in there that I absolutely loved. I was like, I can't believe she has this. And then there was some stuff in there that was completely alien to me, one of which was a lot of her jazz records. Her dad is a jazz musician in Monterey, California. So she grew up in a very kind of like jazz-based music community. And so one of the records she has in her collection was the Carmen McRae Live at the Great American Music Hall. So I put it on one day, and having never heard her sing, I did notice on the record there's one song on there that I did remember hearing another version of. There's a song there called Miss Otis Regrets, which is a great kind of jazz song about murder.
Oh, and, I mean, as one does.
Yeah. But the version that I heard was this crazy version that Bette Midler did back in like the 90s. Like it's on the same album as The Wind Beneath My Wings. And it was completely different from how Carmen McRae does it, or how it turns out I didn't know this until after the fact either, that Nat King Cole did this great version of it. But anyway, I put that on just to hear her version of Miss Otis Regrets, and then I heard that song, let alone the rest of the record, and her voice just dug into me, and her delivey dug into me. The band that is playing on that recording is incredible.
Yeah.
So I fell in love with that record. Out of the numerous albums that my wife brought into our record collection, that's one that I was just like, this one stuck me right in the heart. So, and I love that song. So Paint Your Pretty Picture is one of my favorites.
It's a beautiful song.
Every song on that's a record too that if you've never listened to the entire live, if you like that song, digging into Carmen McRae at the Great American Music Hall just as an entire live album is just it's fairly transformative. Like her delivery is nothing like Nina Simone, but it's very much like the way you listen to a Nina Simone live album, and it just kind of everything just kind of stops, and you're just kind of in that moment as if you were there. That Carmen McRae record has that same effect on me.
Yeah, she definitely gives me a little bit of Ella Fitzgerald vibes, a little bit, but but definitely in her own lane for sure. I'm not putting them together in that regard.
There's another jazz singer. There's another jazz singer named Nancy Wilson, Ella Fitzgerald. If you kind of met them in the middle somewhere, that's kind of where Carmen McRae is.
Okay. What about you, Brandon? What any songs on the playlist that stuck out to you?
Man, several. Honestly, like Terry, Paint Your Pretty Picture was definitely one that also stood out to me. Another one that stood out to me was A Nightmare by Aaron Lee Tasjan.
Yeah, he's a very good friend of mine. Aaron, for a guy who is about our age, his resume reads like someone who's been doing this for 40 or 50 years in the business.
Wow.
Aaron actually also shows up on another song in the playlist, the song Kimberly Met Billy off of Live.
Yes. I was gonna. Yeah, that's another one of my favorites. As well.
So Aaron is playing the second guitar on that, and he's singing harmonies. So Aaron and I go back a good little ways since I've been in Nashville. Aaron's story is quite amazing. He grew up kind of as like a jazz guitar virtuoso. He won like the Kennedy Center Duke Ellington Jazz Award back when he was in high school. Full ride scholarship to Berklee College of Music.
Dang.
But then dropped out to move to New York to play rock and roll. And,
as one does.
So he spent time in New York. He co-founded a band in New York called the Semi-Precious Weapons, who went on to go tour with Lady Gaga when she was on the come up. He left them. He joined the New York Dolls for a time, the reformed version of the New York Dolls. Played with them. He's played with bands like Driving and Crying. He's produced records for different people. A couple years ago, he was nominated for a Grammy for a song that he wrote with an artist named Yola. He is just incredible. He's an incredible performer. He's an incredible songwriter. That song Nightmare is one that speaks to me during these days too, considering the political climate that we're in, not to get too much into that. But if you hear the song if you listen to the song Nightmare and realize that it's from the perspective of someone in the LGBTQ community, who is secure in their identity, but at the same time aware of the outside world and what that might look like. It's a very powerful song.
It really is.
And it's just one of many great songs off of that record. Stellar Evolution just came out a year ago, and it was one of my favorite albums of 2024. And again, that's a guy who is in the Americana genre, if you will, but just from the sound of that album, the sound of that record, the way it was produced, he is pushing the boundaries of what constitutes Americana with the type of production and songs that he's doing. And so he inspires me with every record that he puts out. And I just feel like he's one of those guys. If there's ever been a crime to me in our community, is the fact that Aaron Lee Tasjan is not the biggest name in the music community right now. He's just, because he has a heart for all of us too. Like he's always there to shine a light on the rest of the people that are working in Nashville. He just recently did a full tour called Aaron Lee Tasjan and Friends, where he just invited other musicians, including myself, to like come out and play with him in his band, and then he'd give us a chance to play some of our songs. You know, he's really just they broke the mold with that guy. So yeah. But that song in particular, I think it speaks to some of the horrors of what's going on with folks that are being marginalized even right now, you know, in the States.
And I also think it's...
Oh, go ahead, Brandon.
Well, I was just going to say, I do think it's interesting. This is definitely more Americana than country in sound, this song. But as we've already kind of stated, Americana is very much related to country, at least for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Again, I'm trying not to like get too political with it, but like with the message of this song, I feel like that doesn't typically always align with the general population of fans of country music, and some of the other country, you know, not as nice country songs I may have heard in the past. So that was just something I thought was interesting, that he's got this powerful voice and message in this genre, which I want to see a lot more of, I think.
Yes, as time has gone on, I think if you dig into his catalog, with every album, it seems like he gets a little. He allows more of his own personality and his own personal beliefs to show a little bit more. And in the last two records that he's made, this one and the one prior, without him even trying, you can hear how deeply personal some of these songs are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think I think for a genre like country that is often equated to like just straight up, you know, all American, red, white, and blue, we'll put a boot in your ass, blah, 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 blah. You know, it's kind of one of those things like it's like looking at a negative of a picture. For every one of those things that you see on the reg from somebody who's like playing the God Bless the USA part, on the flip of that, there's somebody else who's showing a completely different perspective.
Yeah.
Yep.
And there's a lot of that happening in country music. And I think there's more openness to it these days with folks like a songwriter like Jason Isbell, who, has been at the forefront of it for a while. He is very outspoken about where he stands politically, and it does not line up completely with folks in the country audience, but he doesn't care.
That's his truth. He's being authentic.
Going back to, like you said, being authentic as an artist.
Yeah,
it matters.
You got to find a way to sleep at night.
Right? Yeah,
like that's where I'm at with it too. Like, it's not always there in my songs, but certainly if you come see me live, like, there's a lot of storytelling and there's a lot of me kind of preaching my own opinion and stuff like that, just so people know where I am and who I am. I like to think that people walk away from a show that I do with not only just the knowledge, just the enjoyment of what they heard, but also they've, when I run into people that have seen me at shows, they come to me just to talk to me because they kind of already feel like they kind of know me. And that's, I know that can sometimes be dangerous, but also it's also a good feeling to know that you've connected with someone on that level. So, yeah. And Aaron does it better than most of us. So I had to.
Along those same lines, another song that caught me off by surprise, and I think Brandon knows exactly what song I'm talking about. Trouble Every Day by the Mothers of Invention.
Yeah.
That song, I'm listening to it and I'm enjoying it, but then there's like a couple lines towards the end of the song where he just kind of just basically just called out what it is, as far as like, different prejudices and different discrimination and stuff that's happening. And I'm just like,
well, I think one of the reasons, first of all, that song has kind of fallen back into it's hard for me not to talk about these particular songs without talking a little bit about politics, just because it's kind of like the elephant in the room right now.
Yeah, the giant elephant.
They're fairly politicized.
Yeah,
their message.
And I think there's a way to talk about politics, and so I'm going to bring it up a little bit here. But
go for it.
Without it being for seeing it for what it is. And I think what's interesting about Trouble Every Day, first of all, that's the first Frank Zappa album that there ever was. And it kind of stands away from the rest of the stuff that Zappa did over the years. Freak Out still stands as kind of like one of those kind of signature psych rock garage albums of the late 60s. The difference being that Zappa was not one to use psychedelics at all. He was very anti-drug, even throughout for the weirdness of Frank Zappa's music. There was never much of a drug type scene involved, and if you were in it, you weren't in the band that long. So what he was talking about in that song was being said with an open mind and being seen with clear eyes. I think one of the things that I love about that song is that it kind of has that kind of bluesy delivery of old school blues songs, just talking about the troubles of the day. But at the same time, like, if you listen to some kind of, there's a little tinge of sarcasm in it, just because of how some people decide to react to the troubles. For everyone who was of clear mind and clear heart about wanting to protest in the 60s against the Vietnam War, people who were protesting for civil rights and all that type of stuff, there were those that were more drawn to they made that their entire identity in a way that wasn't authentic. And if anyone was ever to call out bullshit on any of that, it was going to be Frank. And it was going to be how he used his music. And I think it's just I think there's something to be said. It's almost like a kind of a compendium to the song Nightmare, which came out last year. And some of the same troubles that Aaron is singing about from last year were some of the same troubles that Frank Zappa was bringing up in 1968.
Which is wild and sad and depressing, but
yeah. So
you also can't turn away from it, right?
Yeah, and it all ties together because we're still in this pickle, you know.
There's a few powerful lines from that song, but I think I'm not black, but sometimes I wish I wasn't white is one
that one right there. That's the one that got me.
I was like,
that's
whoa.
the line. That's the line that made me stop dead in my tracks and say, hold up, let me rewind that back. And I literally rewound that back, and I was like,
there was a song I almost put on the playlist, but I was just like, I didn't know how it would translate because it's kind of hard to listen to just because it's a mile-a-minute hardcore punk song from the 80s by Minor Threat called Guilty of Being White, which basically is like another way of what he said in that one line. And kind of one of those things that I feel there's a bunch of us who feel that way in some regard when you see what, the aristocratic, oligarchical white guys are doing right now.
What they have done, what they're doing, probably what they will try to do and may do in the future. It's
so the fact that was written in 1968, and again from somebody like Frank Zappa who just did not care.
No, and very intelligent.
Yeah, very intelligent. Did not care what anybody else thought about it. He just put it out there. It was one of the few songs that, reading Zappa's book, and if you get into Zappa's stuff, like he will even say that the words for a lot of the songs that he would do, he'd make these kind of ridiculous songs with ridiculous lyrics because he felt like the lyrics weren't that important. I feel like another thing that stands out about that particular Frank Zappa album, Freak Out, was that wasn't, there's some of that on that record, but in the case of this one particular song, I felt for a second like there was a little bit of realness to what he was trying to say in that song.
Definitely.
Which makes it a standout in his entire catalog of, 30 years of music, So
speaking of other standouts, again, obviously there's a little bias in these, but I'm just going to throw them out there anyway. The other ones that caught me by surprise are, again, two other artists I didn't know anything about. So apparently I need to step up my history when it comes to music and African Americans doing Americana blues or whatever. But that Sorry You're Sick by Ted Hawkins.
Oh man,
that one
took me out. I was not expecting that to be what it was at all going into it.
There's something just, first of all, I just love it's an earworm of a song.
It is. Yeah.
And that's another one that I was introduced to by some other friends here in town years back. And of course, like once you hear that one song by Ted Hawkins, you can go down the rabbit hole with anything he did. But I love that song because again, of the stuff he recorded, that particular Ted Hawkins record is very, very stripped. It's basically just him and guitar throughout the entire record. And Sorry You're Sick, I remember just hearing it the first time. Somebody, I think he sent it to me. It was my friend Brian Wright, who lives here in town. We've done some writing together. I've played on some of his records. And I remember he sent it to me when I was might have been during COVID. I had not gotten sick yet, but I think he sent that out to some people just because it was fresh on his mind. And, you hear the first little few lines about, I'm writing you now to say I'm sorry you're sick. And, it seems like a really sweet kind of song. And then his ailment for it is, what do you want from the liquor store?
You want something sweet or you want something
sour, something sweet? And it's just,
it's so great.
So it's a drinking song, and
but it's still sweet though. It's still like all these lines of like, whenever I heard you were sick, I felt sick too. And it's just like, it just repeats that sentiment.
Well, it's sweet. It's sweet, but it's also when he says like, I felt sick too. So what do you want from the liquor store? It's basically like at the same time, he's like, I'm using you as an excuse for me to go get drunk.
100%.
Which again to me is like, well, isn't that just like a great basis for any blues song anyway? But also his delivery on it is great. Ted Hawkins' voice is so good,
man. Yeah.
And again, like, luckily somebody turned me on to him. That song too was recorded by another guy here in town named Anderson East, who kind of does like kind of the neo soul type stuff that you'd hear like from St. Paul and the Broken Bones or Raphael Sadiq. So he's got like a full horn section behind him doing a version of Sorry You're Sick with like a full band, which is great. And I enjoyed it when I heard him do it. But at the same time, part of me is just like, just the simplicity of this dude like tapping his foot, playing his guitar, and singing that song. Like this is the version for me.
Absolutely, and the part that it took me out for the same reasons that we all mentioned, but also since we're all former employees of the place, and considering that the place is where people go when they're sick, but also the place also sells alcohol. So I was just like, it just really it took me at a head spin.
Yeah. I think that was one of the reasons that I was drawn to it when I first heard it too. It was just like, I know a little something about this.
It's like slightly relatable.
Right.
Oh man. Honestly, you had so many bangers on this playlist, man. Like I definitely want to thank you for assembling this and definitely opening my mind up to a whole nother genre, a whole new world that I didn't know I was a part of. Like I actually felt a sense of community while listening to these records, including your own as well. One of the records that you that we talked about earlier that I want to kind of dive into just a little bit more was Kimberly Met Billy.
Okay. Yes, that was my favorite. Like, cause I listened to that album whenever Terrio first let me know we were going to have you on the show. I went and listened to that album, and he told me you were making the playlist, and I thought to myself in that moment, like, if he doesn't have Kimberly Met Billy, I'm going to add it to the playlist for you. So I was happy that you had it on here because I think there's several good songs from that album, but I think that one's my favorite.
Well, it's always been. It's hard for me not to always include that when somebody asks me about like these types of things, like especially when you add some songs. I try and the songs I'd added to this one, as far as what's available right now, I like to think of these songs particularly were like kind of a nice summation of what it is that I do. But also when I wrote Kimberly Met Billy, the premise of it, it's actually kind of a good story. Y'all might like this. So believe it or not, the song itself, the premise of the song is based on a true story. The chorus, as it is on the song, was brought to me by another writer named Darren Bradbury, who's he's here in Nashville, but he moved here from northern New Jersey, Bergen County, New Jersey, and we were doing the open mic scene. This was fairly early on, and some of his songs, he's very influenced, like a lot of us are, but it's really all over his music. Highly influenced by the writing of John Prine, which is very kind of like, there's this kind of sense of humor to everything that he does. So he brought this idea of the song to me and told me the story about a girl that he dated in high school who, even to her knowledge, was rumored to be the product of her parents meeting as teenagers at a rock concert and thus consummating their meeting, and she was the product of that. And so then he sang that chorus to me, and he just thought it was just going to be a great excuse to make like a funny song, like a really humorous song where we could throw all these references to it and all this type of stuff. But we never did anything with it together, and I never heard him talk about it again. I just had that chorus with me. And so I called him one night, and I kind of was beginning to put this idea for some of those verses together, and I said, I think I've got it. Do you mind if I use the chorus? And he said, sure. And so I took the element of what the song was about, and I'm kind of a softie anyway. I love romantic comedies. I'm a Pisces. And so I wasn't able to make it like a laugh out loud funny song. It just kind of came out like a sweet love song. So I wrote it as I heard it. I recorded it like in my bedroom at this terrible apartment I was living in at the time. Sent it to him and I said, I think it's done. I think this is the song. And I sent it to him and he was just like, don't change a word of it. Like, that's it. So then I remember, this is tying back into the playlist here, but I just sat on that song for a little bit, and one night I played with Aaron Lee Tasjan in his band at a show, and we all went back to his house afterwards, and everybody was just passing the guitars around and singing some songs, and the guitar got passed to me, and I just was like, well, I feel like I'm in a safe space with my buds here. I'm going to play you one that I haven't played for anybody. And I sat down and played Kimberly Met Billy for them that night. And it was Aaron Lee Tasjan who was just like, that's got to be on the next record.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's one to keep. And so when it came time to do the record, I called Aaron and asked him if he wanted to come play with me on it. So when you listen to Kimberly Met Billy, that version that's on the playlist, you hear Aaron Lee Tasjan singing and playing with me. One of the things I love about that recording, too, if you go back and listen to it, when it gets to the guitar solo, Aaron had come in to record it that day, and he had a little bit of a cold. And in between two of the licks on the guitar and the guitar solo, you hear him sniffle right there on the mic.
I did not catch that, but that's hilarious.
I didn't catch that either.
And I remembered his guitar lick was so beautiful, and it was just so authentic a moment. He had told me even then, he was like, I can do another pass and I won't sniffle. And I was like, no, I think I want to keep that. And we just took the first take. And now whenever we recently played it at that show of his here in Nashville, we played it again. And whenever he plays it, I always feel like it's missing something because he doesn't sniffle on the mic or anything. But,
that's missing that finishing touch.
So to tie all of that around, at one point, another friend of Darren's moved to town who also knew this girl that he had dated. And it turns out that Kimberly and Billy were the names of her parents, Kim and Bill.
Oh, wow.
Kimberly had recently passed away.
Oh.
But before she passed away, like her mom got this girl had heard the song. She thought it was a great testament to her parents. And she got to play it for her mom before she passed. Everybody gave it their blessing, so it's a special song for some people. And
yeah, it's beautiful.
And I still enjoy playing that one live, just because in a live setting, I sometimes open it up to like reference. The song kind of becomes this big story, like it. The song as it is on the record is like 5 minutes, but if you come see me play it live, it can be like a 20-minute song.
They got full body experience.
It's very it kind of takes some twists and turns, and I kind of flesh it out a little bit. And
yep. And then coming to the stage, here's Billy and Kimberly. Like, you bring them out on the stage. Oh man. Another one that got to me that made me feel some kind of way was Hey Jude.
That's a beautiful cover.
Yeah,
that's an awesome cover.
It's the I know that I might get some flack on this one, but the Beatles wrote a wonderful song. Wilson Pickett turned it into a great song.
1,000%.
And
I was 10 toes down. Definitely. I feel some kind of way about the Beatles.
Yeah, Dario is not a fan of the Beatles. We've established on former episodes.
Nobody's perfect. And the truth,
facts.
I grew up when it came to British bands, like my dad was more of a Stones guy than a Beatles guy. I grew up being more of a Who and Kinks guy than I was a Beatles guy. But in the words of Ludacris, recognize royalty when you hear it.
Mm-hmm.
So I do have to. But I think the story of how that version of Hey Jude got made makes it even better. If the backstory is that it was recorded in Muscle Shoals. That's actually Duane Allman of the Allman Brothers on the guitar solo on the outro.
Oh, wow.
And the story is that Hey Jude had just come out. And Duane, they were on a lunch break. Duane was talking about it in the studio and was playing it on the guitar. And Wilson Pickett liked it. And so basically Duane taught him the song. They came back from lunch and cut it. And in the midst of cutting it, like just, they made the song into something even bigger than it was with the Beatles to me. And it features, in my personal opinion, there's a lot of great R&B screams. There's a lot of great soul screams. But you're
that one right there.
That one's up there. It's
you're going to be
up
hard pressed. All the vocal acrobatics that Wilson Pickett does at the end of Hey Jude, you're going to be hard pressed to find any other soul scream outside of James Brown that's better than that. That is just his octave of screaming is just a completely he uses his voice as some sort of growling instrument. And
like you can feel it. You
feel
feel
it all the way through your body.
Yep.
All the way to
all the way
core.
through your body. And so that's one that like I always go back to. Is just like when I think of songs that just absolutely move me in a way. I think that's everything that's not my own that's on that playlist in some way or another is something that like is a touchstone for me emotionally. And the screams at the end of Hey Jude are just so visceral. I'll never be able to get away from it. Neither would I want to. But like it's one of those things of like that type of emotional response that I have to that is one of the things that I try to aim. I'll never hit it, but I will strive to aim for it. And something that I do is like if
Absolutely.
I can touch someone with my music the way that moment touches me, I feel like I've done something.
Right.
But that's how it is with a bunch of the stuff on there that, you know, Dan Reeder does that to me. Dan Baird does that to me. The songs of Kevn Kinney does that to me. So
yes, A Good Country Mile. That one, I like that one too. It's such a beautiful song.
Yeah, but yeah, Hey Jude by Wilson Pickett is just it's the best Beatles song that the Beatles didn't record. You know, it really is.
I love how the Beatles catch so many random strays on this show. It's kind of funny.
You know what? I truly feel though that there's a Beatles song for everybody out there. You just got to find it. You know?
Yeah, Terrio. We just have to find your song.
Yeah, you got to find it and then find me somebody else that did a better version of it.
Someone who covered it better.
I'm going to go ahead and call it. I'm going to challenge you. There's a song that comes to my mind that I feel like you would appreciate.
All right, lay it on me.
It's the last track on Revolver. It's called Tomorrow Never Knows. And Tomorrow Never Knows has its hooks a little bit into it. It is proto hip hop in the way that it is the first song to really feature an actual drum sampling. Basically, they had Ringo play this one drum beat and they looped it and they looped it and they looped it. So really, like Ringo's only playing for like maybe 3 seconds on this song, but they just looped it into a drum loop. And it is, in my opinion, like even before Sgt. Pepper, which gets all the credit for being like the innovative record that it was, Revolver, first of all, if you've never listened to Revolver as an album all the way through, I feel like if any album was going to make any naysayer a Beatles fan, Revolver is the strongest one. It's so good. Like that's the one Beatles album everybody should have. And on that record, I feel like Tomorrow Never Knows would really catch your ear just because it doesn't sound like anything else that the Beatles ever recorded. And there's noises and stuff on there. You'll be like, how did they even get that in 1966? Like, how did they make that happen? It's very, very cool. So
okay,
I throw that out there as a challenge to give Tomorrow Never Knows a listen and see what you think.
Okay. I have it saved in my queue, and I will report back at some point.
All right.
I can't say when. I will acknowledge or confirm or deny.
I have a feeling if you really do like it, you're just going to be too stubborn to admit it.
He's going to be obstinate about it.
Okay, well, first of all, I don't appreciate you calling me out like that, and then secondly, I don't appreciate you being accurate either. So I can neither confirm nor deny these allegations.
That's fair.
But yes,
That's fair.
Nah, I mean, look, I will put my foot in my mouth and I will say if the song slaps or not, but I will also say the inverse of that as well. Anything else you want to ask, Brandon, while we got John?
I do just want to point out one more of your other songs, which you included. Just I know we said it at the top, but Major Key, Last in Line, Kimberly Met Billy, and then two more. Sorry, there's The Braver Man, and then you ended with Your Brick Signatures.
Yeah.
The first song you picked for yourself. I'm sorry, I'm reading wrong. The first song from your latest album, Last in Line, was the fourth song on the playlist. Mm-hmm. And that was another one that whenever I first sat down, like I said before, whenever I heard that we were going to have you on the podcast, I sat down and listened to that album.
Yeah.
That was the one I first started with listening to your music. That first song was like such a good opener for the album itself as a body of work. But then also for me, I thought was a pretty good introduction to you as an artist. It's another song that I was very happy that you included in here, just because I also like very much, I think me and Terrio, we're all kind of in that older millennial age range, I believe.
Sure.
That song definitely speaks to our generation on a very visceral level. I felt like, but in like a relatable way, which was very nice.
Like shaking down the neighbors for the PTA. Like,
yeah.
You remember school fundraisers where you had like,
yes,
you were selling gift wrap or whatever else you could get, so you could get some type of
candy bars or little doodads or whatever bars, it was.
It was that little pop gun that was shaped like an ice cream cone with the foam ball, and if you clipped it, like the foam ball would fly off.
God, we're old.
We had like the little slappy, the little slappy thing that was shaped like a hand that would stick to.
That would stick. Oh yeah.
Yep. I actually played one of those recently.
It would eventually get covered in hair and not stick anymore. And
yes,
you'd leave it in your jeans pocket, and your mom would be pissed because she washed it. Last in Line. It's funny. It was the last song we did for that record, but we kind of knew. I'd been sitting on that riff, that kind of just guitar riff from the top, for a while, and it was just a matter of like coming up with words that went with.
I love that guitar riff, by the way. That's a big part. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, your guitar playing is definitely a big factor in drawing me into your music.
All the really fancy guitar work on that song, just shout out, and for full disclosure, all the fancy guitar work, the slide stuff and everything, that was all done by a friend here in town named Laur Jamets. And Laur is from Estonia, but he has he's actually on the road right now. He's been playing guitar with Sturgill Simpson on his tour.
Oh, okay.
And we've featured him on a few former playlists and episodes.
Yeah, so
I'm a pretty big fan of Sturgill.
Yeah, same.
Laur was all over the Metamodern Sounds of Country Music album and Sailor's Guide to Earth, and he kind of put that band back together for this most recent tour, and so Laur's been back out there doing it. But at the time, Laur was on break from touring with Sturgill, and I'd met him just around town at that point. He was playing with Darren Bradbury a little bit too. Asked him if he'd be interested in coming in and doing some guitar work, and he just came in and laid all that stuff down in like a day's time. He's a genius, but he's also just the sweetest guy in the world. Just loves, again, just one of those dudes who just loves music. To watch him come up with all this guitar stuff that he does, just on the fly, he's a cool guy. So a lot of that great hard rocking edge of that song, credit where credit's due, that came from Laur.
Okay.
He's just such a killer guitar player.
Yeah, man. That's one thing I've known you for a while now. I've been watching from afar via Facebook and other friends. Shouts out to Jake, a good mutual friend of ours.
What up, Jake?
But that's one thing I definitely admire about you, man, is that even though you've accomplished so much in my eyes, I don't know if you feel like you do, but from me watching from afar, I'm always just like the feeling how your community up there in Nashville is rooting for you. I'm down here in Atlanta, like, that's my boy. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm so happy for you, man. Like every time I see like you performing, you're out there doing it, you're grinding, and you're making it happen. I just want to give you your audio flowers now.
Oh, thank you.
It's keep doing what you're doing, because what you're doing is important, and it also encourages people that you don't even know.
Well,
so keep that
amen.
Up.
That means a lot, dude. And I'm going to take those audio flowers and put them in the sonic vase and make sure that they stay watered. And I will remember that.
Love it.
As we go down this path of making this new record, which I hope y'all will enjoy just as much.
Absolutely. Do you have any upcoming events or anything you want to plug?
Well, I think it's important to remember that Juneteenth is still a holiday that should be celebrated. So just in case anybody else politically says that otherwise, I just want to put that out there. But on top of that, come around June, we'll probably be working on crowdfunding to finish up the record. We're going to do another crowdfunding campaign to do that. So we'll need all the help we can get. Please tell your friends. You can find me on socials at Instagram at Jon, Jon Latham, Latham, Pics, Pics. That's on Instagram. I believe that's the same for Threads. Jon Latham on Facebook. Jon Latham on Spotify. Jon Latham on Bandcamp. There's numerous different ways that you can find me out there on socials. Probably going to be doing some house concerts in June and July, so that'll all be listed there on those. Let's see, what else? July 1st, me and some friends are doing a show at the 5 Spot in Nashville for Canada Day, doing the songs of Gord Downey and the Tragically Hip. If you happen to be in town, come on by and celebrate my favorite Canadian rock band. And I think that pretty much is everything that I'll be doing for the rest of this year. New record and some shows on and off here and there. So that's my life for the rest of this year.
Awesome. Well, like you said, if you're in the area, definitely make it a point to go check out Jon Latham and any of the other local musical acts that will be playing.
You can't go wrong. You really can't.
No.
Just go to any of the local bars in East Nashville. Whoever is on that stage, you're probably going to enjoy it. But thank y'all for having me. This has been fun.
Yes, thank you for coming out and talking to us about your career and about your music and all the meaningful connections from the playlists that you made for us today. That really means a lot to us. It means a lot to us to have you out here as a actual artist. That's like Terrio said, you're out there grinding and you're inspiring people that you probably have not even the faintest idea that you're even reaching in that regard. Myself and Terrio definitely among that number.
Well, that means a lot. Just be sure to use those air quotes over artist and career, and I feel like that would be more honest. But I appreciate you guys. Thank y'all.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. Thank you for coming on, and we can listen to you for hours on the album, as well as just talking to you and hearing all the different stories and different connections and stuff. So,
well, if anybody ever cancels, I can always make another playlist. I'd be happy to come on and talk with y'all.
Okay. We will.
Okay, we'll hold you to it.
Hold you to that.
All right.
And in addition to thanking you, John, I want to thank any listeners that are listening to this episode today. Thank you for coming and hanging out with both us, me and Terrio, as well as John, and hearing his perspective. You can go to afterplaylist.com for any social media links, previous episodes, and previous music playlists. Please like and share this episode and the playlist. It's totally free. It helps support the show, helps get John out there as well. It supports all of us here. Very, very much appreciated. If you want to do a little bit more, you can go over to our Black Giraffe community over at blackgiraffemadethis.com for podcast merch and exclusive bonus content. We also have a Patreon if that's your preference as well. Both links are in the show notes. And like I said, just thank you for coming along for us. Until next time, thanks for listening, everybody.
Bye.
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 Black Giraffe made this.